Hey guys! Now I have been having so many of these conversations recently, so many conversations around climbing. Now what I love about cycling, the thing I love the most about cycling is climbing. And I think like with me, cycling and climbing is just like, that's the epitome. Like if you're gonna ride, climbing is just like, I get a gleam in my eye. And when I hear somebody say that they want to do climbing, they want to become a climber, they want to do that, I get so excited. I'm like, yeah, that's so cool, because you're gonna love it. It's gonna take your cycling to this whole other level. The flats is great, yes, racing and that sort of thing is great, but once you get into climbing, it's a healthy addiction. I tell you, it's a healthy addiction, and it's amazing. And you'll just be like, it's the views, I don't know if it's the endorphins, it's the challenge, it's the everything. It just opens up this world of cycling where you can go anywhere and you can ride anywhere. You're not limited to just the flats. And actually that's what got me into cycling in the climbs in the first place, because I would be cycling the flats and I just thought, but I want to go over there. I want to go over there. But I don't know if I'm going to make it back up if I go down that hill, if I take a wrong turn and then I've got to come back. I don't know if I'll make it back. So I'd stick into the flats, and I'm like, but I want to expand my cycling. I want to adventure, and I can't be intimidated by hills. So I started riding in the hills and started practicing, and obviously built up my fitness. And that takes you, that's good, and it takes you some of the way. But if you want to keep riding longer in the hills, higher, harder climbs, and you see other people doing that, and you're like, how do they do that? How do they do that? I'm fit, I'm strong, how are they doing that? It's to do with the bike. Seriously, it's to do with the bike. It's not just about you and your level of fitness and whether or not you can climb. And I talk to people about this all the time. So I'll go out riding with people. I took a group out yesterday. We went out for a ride, and we're talking about climbing, and and somebody like my friend Jason, like he was riding this bike that's really heavy, and he was a lot slower than the rest of us, but he's fit, but if you were just to look at all of us and say, right, and you didn't look at our bikes, you just went, okay, he's a bit, they have to keep waiting for him. It's like, okay, no, he's actually probably fitter than most of us, but the bike that he was riding was hard to ride. It was so heavy. I think he's going to weigh it. I think it's about 20 kg, maybe 25. I don't know. It's really heavy. So when it comes to riding a bike, your level of fitness, yes, that's part of it, but what you're riding is going to make such a big difference. It's going to make such a big difference. So the thing with cycling as well that I'm still learning, because it's not like, okay, here's cycling, here's a little box that it fits into, and that's it. There are so many moving parts, there's so many variables. It depends on the brand, the type of bike, the style of riding that you're doing. It's like learning, it's maybe even harder than learning another language, because there's not any absolutes. There's so many variables with cycling. So the thing that I struggled with to learn in the start, and I have to do a shout out for Dan here, because he's helped me so much with riding, with doing the climbing and understanding the gearing. It's one of the hardest things to understand with cycling, is the cassettes. Is the gearing. It's the gearing. The gearing is the hardest thing to learn. So I've got my bike here, and I'm going to show you. And I'm going to try and break this down and make it really, really simple. So those of you who understand all of this and understand all the technicalities of it and all of that, this isn't for you, but keep watching. This is for people who don't really know much about bikes, but you've brought a bike, you think, I've got a bike, now I'm going to go out and ride in the hills. I've got a bike, I'm going to go and do like 150 kilometers. I've got a bike, I'm going to build up my fitness. It's not as simple as that. It's not gonna work, because I see this all the time. You've got a bike, but what bike have you got? What gearing have you got? This is the big question, and this is what I say to people. I'll be riding, and they're struggling on a climb. They're struggling. They really want to ride. They want to do the hills. They want to do all of these adventures, but they struggle, and it puts them off, and they end up not doing it, or they end up just staying on the flats because they're struggling so much. And it's sad, because I want everyone to be out in the hills riding and having adventures. And they'll be riding. I'll look down, and I'm like, no wonder you're struggling. It's not you. It's your bike. And I'll look down. Okay, so let's just get back to the basics and the beginnings. Right, okay, here we have a cassette. Okay, so this is your cassette. This is all the gears that your bike moves up and down through. And here you'll have a chain ring, 2 chain rings I've got on mine here. So I've got a small chain ring and I've got a big chain ring. Okay, and a really simple way to look at this is that when your bike is in the big chain ring is when you're on the flats. When it's on the small chain ring, that's when you're going on the climb. Okay, it's not black and white like that, but basically when you're beginning and you're just starting out, an easy way to remember is just big chain ring when you're on the flats, because you can just push away, and then the small chain ring, it gives you more spinning power when it's not hard to climb when you're in the small chain ring. Okay, so we're not going to talk about that. It's a really simple way of explaining it. On the other side, we have the cassette. Now this is what people don't understand. This here is what people don't understand. The cassette is the key, okay? The cassette is the key. If your cassette is the wrong size, you will not be able to climb unless you're somebody that is training to be a pro cyclist and you're building up your muscles and you're dedicating your life to being a pro cyclist or doing all of that. Then if you're someone like me and you've got the wrong cassette, it is going to be so hard for you to climb. It is going to be really hard. So what does that mean? What sort of cassette should you have? Okay, this is the cassette, and this is the different gears that the bike moves through when you're changing. I want to go easier, I want to go, so it's like, oh, I want to go, into a harder gear. So it's like, I'll move the gearing and the chain goes bump, 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 bump down onto these. It's like, oh, I want to go into something easy, and you go dun, 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 and it goes into this big one up here, okay? So now when people talk about cassettes and what size cassette you have, I have a 42, okay? So I have a 42 cassette. That's a really big cassette. It's like a dinner plate. People go, oh my God, you've got a 42. It's like, yeah, because I love climbing and I want to climb a lot of hills and I want to keep climbing and I want to go up really steep gradients. So I've got it, because I'm not turning into I've got muscles. Yeah, I've built up some muscles in my leg, but I'm not a bodybuilder or a pro cyclist, and I'm not dedicating my entire life to being able to go up a hill on a smaller cassette. So I've got this 42 cassette here. And what that means for those of you, because we're talking about real basics here, is that when you count the teeth around here, 1, 2, hang on, where are we going? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, keep going around, all the way around, back to the start. That is 42 teeth, okay? Okay, now that means that when I'm riding, when I'm going up a hill, when you're riding and you're pushing, and you're going around like this, and there's that effort. When I can put mine up into a 42 and I'm going up something steep because it's really steep and hard and I've got to push with my legs, when I put it into a 42, instead of going like this and I'm like, like this, it means I can go like this easier. It means I've got more spin. I can do spinning easier. Okay, so you think the bigger that is, the easier it is for me to spin. I'm going to show you some other cassettes, right? Okay, so this here was the first cassette that I had. No, actually this was the second cassette I had on the bike. So this one is a 34 cassette, okay? So this has got 34 teeth. I'll show you the size next to this one, okay? So that's my 34 cassette, right? This here, so that's the biggest one. So initially I didn't have this one. This was my biggest cassette, this 34, which is somewhere, if you look, it'll be somewhere down here. So that was my cassette, 34 teeth. You count around here, 34, 1, 2, 3, 34, okay? One of the cassettes that when I first started riding was a 25, okay? The other parts aren't here, I haven't got them, they're just floating around somewhere over there. But this is a 25. Look at the size of this compared to my 42. Look at that. Look at that. Oh my God. That was as big. So you imagine, like that. And people ride around on that. So this is the biggest, that was the most that mine could go on to, was this one here. 25. And then now look at me, I've got this 42. Look, if I put that there, and it's hard to tell, it's hard to see the comparison here, isn't it? So let's just lay them out here, right? Okay, so we got that one there, that one there. Okay, so we've got our 34, 25, and then my massive 42, which means I can, well, let's see if I can show you what that's like when you're when you're just riding. It's like you're going like this up a climb rather than well, it's always flexing. So when people say to me, I can't climb, I'm struggling on the climb, I'm riding with them and we're going up a climb and they're like, I can't do this, it's really hard, and I know that they're fit, I'll look down and I'll see something. Usually, honestly, usually they'll be having this is a 25, they'll have a 28. They'll have a 28 cassette. No wonder you're struggling. No wonder you're struggling. Wonder. Even a lot of people actually have a 34 as well, or 32 or a 34, because that's a common one. But even then, you know, if you, and a lot of people, they say to me, my knees hurt. It's like, yeah, because you're grinding, you're pushing so hard and you're pushing so hard over and over and over. Of course your knees are gonna hurt. It's crazy. And I just have to say this, and I don't want to be pointing the fingers or making like judgments or assumptions on everybody and everything, but I hear this so much, and I want to speak here to all the females out there. If you have a partner, a husband, a brother, a father in your life who's a cyclist, and they say to you, you should be able to climb on the gearing that you've got, and you've got 28 or a 30 or a 32 and you want to go to a 40, and they say, no, you should be able to climb on that and it's really hard and you can't do it. And they say, well, you should be able to do it. And then you're just like, you know what? I don't like climbing. I don't like cycling. I'm just going to stick to the flats. Because they're saying you shouldn't go to a 40 or a 42. Just ignore them, because they don't know what they're talking about, okay? Ignore them. They do not know what they're talking about. They know what they're talking about from their perspective. They know what they're talking about from maybe the old school cycling perspective. They know what they're talking about from the school of hard knocks of like, you've just got to like push through and you've got to do this and you've got to like, I'm going to be better than everybody else and do it on the smallest cassette. Does that stop you riding though? Does that stop you getting on your bike and going for a ride? Yeah, it does, because I hear about this all the time. People go, I don't like climbing because my husband said that or my partner said I should be able to climb, and he said I don't need that 40 cassette. It's like, if that 40 cassette means that you're going to get out there and ride on those hills and explore and adventure and push yourself a little bit more and enjoy the ride, there's no question about that. Just do it. Just do it. Ignore what people say. Ignore what people are trying to like be macho or trying to like, you know, force you into like some little, you know, round box. Get out there, change your cassette, and they'll be like, oh no, but you can't do that because it won't fit with the, you know, you can change it. So all of you out there who are a naysayer, get a derailleur extension. That's what I got, an extension. So here. So if anyone says, no, you can't do it, it's not going to fit, go and see a bike mechanic here in Adelaide. I know who to go to. It's Kim at North Adelaide Cycles, and anywhere else. You just want this here. It's a derailleur extension, and it means that you can get a bigger cassette, which means the chain will be able to fit all the way around, fit into all of this gear, and go all the way around here. Okay, that's my really simplified version of it, because I'm not a bike expert or a mechanic from that perspective. So yeah, you can get a derailleur extension, so you get that hanger there. Yeah. And you get your bike, you want to get into climbing, you want to take the pressure off your knees, you want to be able to last on the climbs, and do it. If that's going to be the difference between you riding or not, climbing or not, cycling on adventures, lasting, because your legs won't hurt as much when you can last. They don't hurt as much when you can just keep riding like that without having to like rather than it'll still a challenge, but the challenge is because you're going like on steeper gradients, you're going harder, you're going longer, it's really cool, you're doing more climbing. So here's my message to everybody out there. It's like, if you think that you're not good enough, that there's all these other people who are better cyclists than you, no, check what gearing you've got, check what bike you've got. Is your bike really heavy? Is it 20 kg? Because if you're riding a 20 kg bike with a 28 cassette, like my friend Jason was, and everyone else is riding, you know, someone like me, you're riding with someone like me on a 42 cassette, you got 42 teeth here, and you've got a 9 kg bike, of course I'm gonna be faster, of course it's gonna be easier for me. Of course I'm not going to get puffed. Of course I'm going to be able to do those climbs. How could I not on something like this? when you're riding something like this. Here's a good example. A friend of mine did a ride a couple of weekends ago, and she's recently gone to a 40 cassette, and she went with a friend of hers who was on the 34, and they're both probably about the same level of fitness and strength. They both ride, they both run, and they went up this really steep hill here in South Australia, and my friend made it to the top and her friend didn't. Her friend had to walk. There's no difference between them really, between their level of fitness and their ability to cycle. The difference was that my friend had a bigger cassette and her friend didn't. Her friend had a 34, I think it was, or a 32. That was the only difference. If her friend had the same size cassette, she would have made it up there. She would have made it up. So don't look around and think that you're not good enough. That's my big message here, is don't think that you're not good enough and that everyone else is better than you and that you're missing something. Well, you are, because you're missing just the cassette. That's all. It's not something wrong with you, you know. It's not something wrong with you. So yeah, get out there, get into climbing because it's freaking awesome. Get your bike set up. Make sure you have get a lighter bike. Don't carry heaps of shit with you. Get the right gearing, get the right gear. So a lot of people will probably jump on here and say, oh yeah, but it depends, like there's all these ratios and stuff. Ignore all of them and just go to your bike mechanic, whoever you go and see, and say, I want a bigger cassette because I want to do climbing and I want the easiest cassette. Ignore anyone who says to you, you don't need that. Say, I do need that, and I want you to make that happen on my bike, and I want to have the biggest cassette that is possible to go on my bike. That's all you need to say. And they'll push back and you push back and say, no, I want to climb. I want to save my knees. I want to enjoy climbing. I want to, whatever it is. And because of that, you're going to get fitter, stronger, faster, and you're going to do more climbing, more adventures, ride more hills, and it's going to be awesome. All right, let me know how you go. Big hugs, everybody. Mwah. Enjoy your riding.